You know that feeling, that gut feeling? Or when you get butterflies in your stomach? We say these things all the time, right? But what if they're way more literal than we think? We're going to get into it because there's this incredible, powerful conversation happening between your gut and your head, and what you eat can totally change the conversation.
I know, it sounds a little bit like science fiction, but honestly, that's the big idea we're digging into. The connection between your gut and your brain is so important, so essential to how you feel, that scientists actually call it the gut-brain axis.
Okay, just stop and think about that number for a second. 168 million neurons. That's more neurons than in your entire spinal cord. So we're not just talking about a simple tube for digestion. This is its own super complex nervous system. They even call it the enteric nervous system.
So this second brain is talking to your first brain all day, every day. What's it saying? And how is it even doing that? Well, that's what we're here to do. We're going to decode that secret conversation and find out how food plays a massive role.
All right, so let's start with the connections. How does this actually work? Because it's not just some vague feeling. It's a real physical and chemical network. Think of it like a superhighway with 3 main lanes of traffic between your gut and your brain.
The first lane, and the most direct, is the vagus nerve. The best way to picture it is like a giant fiber optic cable running straight from your brain all the way down to your gut. And it's a two-way street. Your gut sends updates to your brain, and your brain sends commands right back down.
Lane number 2 is all about chemical messengers. You've definitely heard of serotonin, right? The happy chemical? Well, get this. About 95% of your body's serotonin is made in your gut. Not your brain, your gut. Same goes for GABA, which helps keep you calm. So your gut is basically a massive factory for your mood.
And that brings us to the third lane, which is maybe the most mind-blowing of all, your gut microbes. You have trillions of tiny organisms living in there, and they are busy. When you eat fiber, they digest it and create these amazing compounds called short-chain fatty acids, or SCFAs. And these little guys are powerhouses. They can influence everything from your appetite to the strength of your blood-brain barrier.
So we have this incredible communication system. It's amazing. But what happens when the lines get crossed? What happens when that system gets messed up? Well, an imbalance in your gut microbes, something called dysbiosis, can cause some serious static on the line.
See, a healthy gut has this really strong barrier that acts like a bouncer, deciding what gets into your bloodstream. But when things are out of balance, you can get what's called leaky gut. The barrier gets weak, and suddenly things that are supposed to stay in the gut, like toxins from bad bacteria, start leaking out into your blood, and your body does not like that.
When those toxins break through, your immune system freaks out. It goes on high alert, and that triggers this constant, low-level inflammation all over your body. It's like a silent fire that's always smoldering. And researchers now believe this silent fire is a huge factor in brain disorders, everything from depression and anxiety to even Alzheimer's.
Okay, so if an unhappy gut can start that fire, how do we put it out? Well, the single most powerful tool we have is right there on our plates. By choosing the right foods, we can actually fight that inflammation and support a healthy gut.
So let's talk about the villains first. These are the foods that basically add fuel to that fire. We're talking about ultra-processed stuff, sugary drinks, white bread, processed meats, you know the drill. They're usually super low in fiber and high in the kinds of fats and sugars that the bad gut bacteria just love.
But then we have the heroes. These are the foods that come to the rescue. They're whole foods, just packed with fiber, healthy fats, and antioxidants. So think colorful fruits and veggies, especially berries and dark leafy greens. Fatty fish full of omega-3s. And of course, whole grains, nuts, and legumes to feed your good gut microbes. Oh, and fermented foods like yogurt are fantastic too.
So taking all of this science, researchers have actually designed diets specifically to protect the brain. And one of the most exciting is called the Brain Anti-Inflammatory Nutrition Diet, or for short, the BRAIN diet.
And here's the blueprint. It's pretty straightforward. You can see the foundation is a really high intake of all those hero foods we just mentioned. Lots of plants, healthy fats, fish, and even fermented dairy. Then, in moderation, you've got things like poultry and coffee. And at the bottom, in the limited section, are all those foods that can fuel inflammation, like red meat and sweets.
So you might be thinking, okay, this sounds like a healthy diet.
And you're right, but what makes the brain diet special is how specific it is for brain health. It doesn't just say eat dairy, it says focus on fermented dairy for the microbes. It specifically calls out eating more legumes, more fatty fish, and puts a huge emphasis on the brain-protecting power of berries and leafy greens.
And the results of eating this way? They can be absolutely stunning. A very similar diet called the MIND diet was studied for years, and one study found that people who followed it the closest had a 53% lower risk of developing Alzheimer's. 53%. Even people who only followed it moderately well still cut their risk by over a third. That's just incredible.
So after all of that, after decoding this whole gut-brain conversation, what's the one thing you really need to remember when you're looking at your plate?
Honestly, it really boils down to 3 simple steps. 1. Reduce the villains. Just try to cut back on the ultra-processed stuff. 2. Add in the heroes. Crowd your plate with tons of colorful plants and healthy fats. And 3, and this is so important, focus on fiber. Fiber is literally food for your good gut microbes. When you feed them, they make all those amazing compounds that protect your brain.
So here's the bottom line. The food you eat isn't just calories, it's information. Every time you eat, you're sending a message up that superhighway. By nourishing your gut, you are directly, actively supporting your brain's health, your mood, and its ability to handle stress. It's a pretty powerful thought, isn't it? That the future of mental health and brain health might not be in a pharmacy, but in our kitchens. The evidence is just getting stronger every day. What we eat could be one of the best things we ever do for our brains. It's food for thought.